Hi, and welcome to the Demystifying Mental Toughness podcast for athletes, coaches, and professionals who want to achieve their goals faster. I'm David Charlton, and I'll be sharing proven methods from leading athletes, coaches, and experts that will help you get the most from your talent. Today's show is sponsored by Functional Intelligent Training, who are a sports injury clinic located in Gosforth near Newcastle upon Tyne and specialise in athlete development, nurturing future champions, strength and conditioning support and excellent rehabilitation services. Hi everyone, it's not long till Christmas now, and this episode promises to be a good one, but also an emotional one. It's an emotional episode for the guest, David Joanno. David talks about his childhood and bullying. He opens up about youth football, about problems with drug addiction, and importantly, he also talks about how he's turned his life around and set his heart on building a brighter future, not only for himself and for his children, but also for people who are involved in grassroots, youth, amateur, and semi-professional sport clubs, where he's gone on to set up the Sports Business Club, a networking group with a difference. The way our conversations flowed, I hope you go on to find this episode an inspiring one. So hi David, could you tell the listeners all about yourself, your background and what it is that you do now?
Yeah, hi David. So I'm 40 years old. I'm a single parent of 3 children. I live in Kent. A bit of a background about myself. I have ADHD, so as a youngster I found that quite difficult. I was very good at sport, very good at music, but bullied and a little bit lonely. As I become an adult, I turned to drugs to kind of suppress my anxiety and my insecurities. My particular drug of choice was cocaine. In my young adult life, I proved to be a very good salesperson. I worked as an estate agent and succeeded quite well. I had a reasonable life. Probably never really knowing who I was, because I'd kind of made up a fake Dave to protect me from my own insecurities and anxieties. Unfortunately, as I got older, up until kind of like my mid to late 30s, my drugs consumption kind of spiraled. I got to a stage where I lost most of my friends. Not many people could trust me. And I went from being a very successful salesperson, homeowner with a family and 3 kids, to being on the streets. More recently, I went to a couple of stints of rehab, and I managed to pull myself back. I spent a year and a bit doing kind of not really going back into what I loved work-wise, but just kind of doing the odd bar work or working in a coffee shop just to keep some money coming in whilst I worked on my mental health. And I learned a lot about meditation, cognitive behaviours, and I started to do some work with myself. And fortunately, touch wood, I'm now happy, healthy, and able to refine the skills that I had for selling ideas to actually launch a project which we've done recently called the Sports Business Club, which is a business network that funds sports clubs and charities and community projects all over the UK, including addiction and mental health, which is close to my heart. And I've met some fantastic people along the way. And that's probably bringing you up to date.
It's an inspiring story there, what you talk about, and I'm sure the listeners are going to get a lot of benefit from the next half an hour or so that we're talking. Do you want to start with earlier on? You mentioned about bullying and the effects that had on you.
Yeah, it's a strange one, because you would think the captain of the school football team, and I play lead guitar in a band, you kind of assume that type of person would have good friends, you know. But because of the ADHD, junior school particularly, I used to say the wrong thing at the wrong time all the time. So I was easily picked out for ridicule and to be put down verbally. It wasn't so noticeable at primary school, because I think, I had a couple of friends. You kind of, I suppose you don't really, until hormones kick in, until you start to become more of an adult, it doesn't affect you as much. And then I think when I went to secondary school, that's when I really noticed a big change. I mean, I had an issue, unfortunately. I lost a finger when I was 14 as well. And that kind of left me quite open to bullying. I mean, I had gloves put in my locker with fingers cut out, and I would be regularly put down by people in the class, so I'd be sitting on my own quite a lot. I can remember I was actually part of a football team, and in the football team, I was one of the better players, but I wasn't liked, and I can remember it, like the back of my hand. Was on a journey to Great Yarmouth from Kent for a competition, and we were all in a little minibus, and the players actually made a wall around my seat of their kit bags, so they didn't have to talk to me. And I was on a bus for 2 hours with a manager and the assistant manager that let them do it. They barricaded me in the corner of the bus so they didn't have to speak to me.
Wow.
But I kept it all inside.
Really, really tough for you at the time.
Not easy, but, I kept it inside. I didn't really share it with my family or friends, which was the big problem. And that's what I've learned now. But yeah, it kind of, I became very anxious meeting anybody because I just naturally assumed that they wasn't going to like me. So I created an alter ego, unfortunately, which came across as arrogance, where anyone I did meet, I told them how wonderful I was, because inside, I didn't think I was worth anything.
So when you look back at like situations like that, I suppose, what advice would you give to coaches in sport if they notice that type of thing? And what advice would you give them? Well,
look, let's be blunt. In the 80s, things were a little bit different, okay? And then prior to that, they were even more. I mean, we had years of slavery, then we had women not being able to vote, So let's be blunt. There's a lot of change that's happened in the world, and I would like to believe that with more mental awareness, anti-bullying, anti-racism, equal rights for men, women, and whatever gender, you would like to think that people, and you'd like to think that people are less likely to bully. I can imagine people still are, because it's the way they're brought up, and if they're brought up by parents that feel that way, then generally the kid follows those values if that's what they've been taught. But you would hope that a coach would step in. I mean, it's difficult because if a coach steps in and tells the other guys off to protect the person who's being bullied, sometimes the person that's being bullied then feels that they're being singled out even more, and potentially could isolate them even more. So, it's probably better for coaches, if they notice it, to try and engage that person within the group with a common ground, and then maybe have a chat with one or two of the leaders of the group quietly to say, look, this isn't right. You shouldn't really be doing this, and I'd like you to, take your responsibility to lead your friends, not to single somebody out. Because making an example of someone that's being bullied actually makes the person that's being bullied feel even worse. If you make an example of them in front of everybody. So it is a very difficult situation to manage, but you would hope that with social media is a double-edged sword. It makes people more anxious. It can actually not help mental health with a lot of bullying and influences from other people around. But on the flip side, sharing that knowledge, I think people have become more aware. But look, I decided to take drugs. That was my decision. But all of the underlying work that left me so weak-minded came from those days. And I think if I had different support, I probably would have made different choices.
Do you want to tell me a little bit more about that? About you talked about how sharing things and talking about things is powerful. Your experiences around that. Yeah.
See, it's a really difficult thing because I love my parents to bits. I've got a very good relationship with them, but my parents didn't really know how to support me. They never really found out about the drugs until my early 20s. The bullying I kind of hid. I did have a couple of close friends. So from their point of view, they could, when I was at home, they could see me going out and playing. They could see me going down the gym. They could see me going out on the weekends and the evenings. So from their point of view, I'm a normal kid. I kind of created my own mental toughness inside because my parents' relationship was very tough when I was young. They kind of almost, they used to argue a lot. Bills, were hard to pay. My dad was in 2 jobs. So I never really felt close to them or that I could share my problems with them because they had their own. So I tried to take it all on myself. So all the way through my youth into my young adult life, I never spoke to anybody about it. And then I suppose mid-20s, drugs became apparent. I've been taking them for about 4 or 5 years. My dad's old school, black and white. Just don't take them. Didn't want to talk about it. Didn't want to know how I felt. Just thought that I was doing things wrong. That's not his fault. It's just the way he was brought up. My mum, unfortunately, struggles to deal with any type of emotion. She's either too happy or too depressed. It's kind of like, when I say that, it's no general middle ground. So I didn't feel I could turn to them. And I had partner after partner that I tried to hide it from, which obviously you can't do. And then my long-term partner, we actually used to partake in drugs together when we first met. And she stopped, I didn't, as we got older. But I had one friend from school that stuck with me all the way through. And, there was one day that he actually broke down in front of me. I've never seen him cry in his life. And he was in his 30s. And he just told me about the effort and the trouble and the mental torture he had trying to look after me. But he had his own family and kids, and he had his wife that was like, look, you cannot help this guy because we've got kids. You can't have someone that's on drugs coming around. You can't have this, you can't have that. So he was torn between his best mate from childhood and his family. So, yeah, look, I didn't even learn to speak until I lost everything. And I truly believe that, at one point I was doing about £6,000 a month of cocaine before the end. And if I hadn't lost everything, I think I would have taken enough to die before I actually spoke to anybody. And it was once I lost everything that I realised that, look, I've got 3 kids that I love. I've got one choice now. I can either come back or I might as well just give up full stop. And that's when I had to speak. And it's a terrible thing for someone to get all the way to the bottom before they feel that they have to say something,
So that was the turning point for you, actually hitting rock bottom, and then you began to put better things in place to help yourself. Yeah.
I had to, because it was, I think if I could, it sounds really bad because this is how weak I was at the time. I think if I wasn't on the streets and I could still afford drugs, I wouldn't have sorted myself out, because I would have carried on, because cocaine's a psychological addiction more so than a physical addiction. Okay. So I was suppressing all of those emotions and all of those thought processes with cocaine. So even if I was on the streets, if I had money to buy cocaine, I wouldn't have come back, because I would have carried on taking the cocaine and suppressing it. I was forced. It was almost like, detox, because it had to be detox because I couldn't afford it. Didn't know where to go, and I was scared. So, yeah, it was the turning point, but I'm lucky it was the turning point, because I wouldn't have done it for myself, trust me.
You talked about being successful in sales. Were you on the cocaine when you were actually doing the sales roles at the time?
Yeah. So, obviously, initially when I took cocaine, it was random. So maybe once a week, once every 2 weeks, a little bit on a night out. And that went, so it gradually progressed for a number of years. So, I was a successful salesperson, and it wasn't affecting my work. I wasn't taking it into work for a good 9 years from doing it. But the last 6-7 years, I did start taking it in work. It did affect my performance, because I'd gone from a sales job to a manager's job, and I was actually managing staff. And when you've got in the back of your mind, I want to do drugs, or I need to do drugs, or I'm going to go and do drugs, or whatever it might be, then you're not really with it. You're not really concentrating on leading. You're not really concentrating on your office and the staff that are with you. And then they don't tell you, but they know. And they don't tell you, but they're talking to each other about it, So everyone knew about it. And there was me thinking I was hiding it from everybody. So it's, and then when everything goes wrong, everyone's like, yeah, we knew, and I almost sat there and thought, why the bloody hell didn't you help me? But what I realise now is if they did help me, I'd have never helped myself. So actually, sometimes you can help someone too much and it allows them to carry on with their problems.
Yeah.
So it was, it did affect my work in the end. I had a situation where I had a drug debt of a couple of grand that was threatening to come into my office. So I had to let a managing director know. And it was a little bit disappointing, their response. They paid the bill because they knew that I was a very good salesperson and brought them a lot of money in. But there was no backup with it. There was no support on the mental health. There was no support on the drugs. It was literally pay the bill off, sort yourself out. This is coming out your salary at the end of the month. That was it. When the minute they paid the bill off, guess what? The dealer was able to give me more.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, their response to pay the bill off was helpful because they didn't want the other staff to be involved in an argument in the office. but even the company itself, and I do believe companies have a responsibility to their staff, and it just didn't happen.
Yeah, you would like to think that would be handled differently again now than what it was, a few years ago?
2011, yeah, so 9 years ago.
Yeah, but again, I suppose it'll depend on the company and their values and how they view mental health.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I can tell this has been difficult for you, so I appreciate
That's right.
you talking through this. So you've hit rock bottom and you've then gone into rehab. Do you want to just tell myself and the listeners more about the rehab process?
Yeah, rehab's a strange one. It's really weird. The actual concept of rehab, if everybody actually went through a week's worth of rehab, I think the world would be a better place. It's really strange because you're in an accommodation, let's say a house, with a number of adults, and they all come from different backgrounds. Drugs, there were drugs, there were alcohol, and some of it is, every single drug you can think of under the sun, and they look like a drug addict, where I never did. Yeah, and then you got those people that have drunk themselves to death, and they look 20 years older than they should be, and they can't, they chain smoke all day long. And we've all got these mobile devices, we've all got these laptops and everything else, and all of that's taken away from you overnight. And it was really weird because what you started to notice in the group of, and just to give you an idea, I was in a group of 15 in which 5 have now died. So in 3 years, 1/3 of my group are dead from rehab. Okay, wow. Just to give you an idea. All right, I'm only in touch with one of them. The others are all back on what they're doing. Okay, right. So 2 out of 15 have come out. Okay, but when you take away everyone's laptops, when you take away everyone's iPhones, people start to become human again. And 4 or 5 days in, we're playing cards, we're playing chess, we're talking, we're reading books. God, it was just a complete change. And I think that, and then we start talking to each other about how we think and feel, because we've got this common issue, this addiction. So we all understand each other, so you don't feel like the odd one out anymore. And then you realise that all these people, these drug addicts, these drunks, they're fantastic people. And that's the thing about addicts, is you're not a bad person, you make bad decisions. And that's what people don't understand. Now, rehab was good in that respect. You detox and you start to realise that actually you're a human and you're worth something. I think that there's 2 types of ways that you can go through rehab. There's steps and strengths. Steps are more so like the Narcotics and Alcohol Anonymous. There's like 12 steps and you follow them. And one of the biggest ones is, just for today, I'm not going to do drugs or whatever it is you were doing. Strengths is more to work on your mental ability for when you come out of rehab. I was never a steps person. I knew what was right, I knew what was wrong, but mentally I wasn't strong enough. So I looked at the kind of strength side of things, where you work on your cognitive behaviours, you work on understanding your brain, you work on understanding cause and effect when you make a decision, what it affects everybody else, and so on and so forth. Now, as much as you have that knowledge, it's not until you're back in the real world that you realise if you can use it or not. And actually, I think the support after rehab needs to massively be looked at. The support from the councils needs to massively, not councils, the NHS government needs to massively be looked at. I mean, I was referred to Turning Point, which is a council-led kind of addiction therapy. One of the counsellors was talking to me about selling his bloody house because I was an estate agent. Talking about the viewers that he had. Yeah. This guy just wanted his money. He didn't really care about whether I was all right or not. Yeah. And he was just ticking a box. Now, those are the type of people you've got helping people that are actually a drain on society because it costs money to look after them. And they're actually not contributing back because they're not working or and so on and so forth. So, Narcotics Anonymous and Alcoholics Anonymous, I see that works for a lot of people, but unfortunately, the way I see it is you're replacing one addiction with another. You're now addicted to turning up to a group and talking about how badly you did in previous lives and listening to how badly everybody else did. And it's almost like you feel part of a family because you all screwed up. And you pay for the privilege of going there on a weekly basis. Now, granted, if it stops someone taking drugs or drinking, carry on. But I do believe that the best way to heal someone is to show them their true worth, their true value, to appreciate them, give them a goal, give them something to aim for, fulfill that anxiety and that emptiness.
I suppose one thing that stands out from what you're saying, it must have taken a hell of a lot of commitment from yourself. You talk about goals there. Were you setting yourself short-term goals along the way to try and overcome this?
Yeah. Yeah. First of all, it was just make sure I could have food and drink. That was a goal. Then I managed to find myself a studio flat. I'll tell you now, I could touch my kitchen sink from my single bed. That's how small it was. But to me, I could shut a door and I was safe, you know? And then it was right, you know, now what we do is we get a job. Doesn't matter what it is, just get a job. Yeah, I'll do anything rather than sit down and do nothing. So, yeah, got a job. Then I went back into a estate agency. One thing I realised is going back into a estate agency clean. I didn't want to be back there. I didn't want to be back there. I'd done it. I succeeded, but I just never realised I succeeded because I was off my face all the time. But I'd done as well as I probably could do in a estate agency. I was a very successful branch manager and a trainer of other salespeople. And yeah, I think my goals were, you know, to get my kids back. You know, in January 2018, the goal was to have a career, get some money, get home and get my kids back. And on the 5th of September 2020, I'd gone from studio flats, one-bed flats, sharing with friends and pub jobs and coffee shop jobs and so on and so forth to starting my own business, which I started in May, around a sports club that's there for the community and does lots of mental health work and education. Launched my own business on the 1st of September and moved into my own place on the 5th of September. And my kids are now back every other weekend overnight. I mean, I was seeing them every other weekend, but not overnight previously because they didn't have the accommodation. And now they've got their own rooms. You know, they rock up every other weekend. We're right by the beach. So, you know, now I've as far as I'm concerned, I've succeeded. And I don't need to push myself as hard as I was now. But if you don't progress and take a step forward every day, then you're kind of falling backwards. And I don't want to do that either. So now it is to build a life for my kids and to run the Sports Business Club, the project, to be able to provide finances out there or funding out there for people to have sport, mental health coaching, you know, community, and give some people the opportunity to do something to take them away from their everyday struggles, you know?
It's hugely inspiring what you're talking about there, David. So I suppose, yeah, going on to 2021, all of this awareness of yourself and your emotions and the little goals. What's 2021 hold for you and the Sports Business Club?
Well, other than Brexit and lockdown.
Well, yeah, exactly. The uncertainty doesn't help. But
this is, I find it ironic because like everybody talks about how difficult lockdown has been, and it has. And don't get me wrong, it has. But to me, I feel safe. I'm happy because, you know, I've come from a place far worse, you know. So and everything's relative. Let's be blunt. So, you know, but where does it go next year? Look, we're about to launch a support pack that's supporting sports clubs up and down the country. A part of that support pack is any sports club, any sport, any age. There's mental health, there's education, there's people that will work with youngsters on their confidence or on their anxieties, as well as teaching them techniques of sport, as well as supporting clubs financially. To me, with all my problems as a kid, I could walk on that pitch and for 90 minutes, I didn't have any problems. Yeah. And that's the power of sport. It's not just to keep yourself fit. It's about being part of something. It's about being able to switch off. So sport's massive. We're launching the Charity Business Club to partner that now because we want to start putting some money into charities as well after the success of the Sports Business Club. So to me, where's my plan? Look, you know, I'm now in a situation to find a partner. So anyone listening to this, you're obviously not going to want someone like me. So well done. So I'll move you guys to the side. That's fine. No. So yeah, now you know I've now got a home. I've now got money. You know, not lots of money, but enough to live. I've now got my kids back. I've got some really good friends around me, and they all know what I'm doing. You know, and where I've come from. So my life's different now because instead of trying to hide, everyone knows, and they still accept me for who I am. And you have got no idea. After years of not being accepted, but that one person that doesn't know you, that you tell everything to, and they still say, I'm here, that means a world to someone like me, you know? And now I've got loads of them. And I'm writing a book at the moment, so it's a biography on me, and that journey, which I've just kind of briefly discussed. I'm due to hopefully get it out spring to summer next year. It's not going to be in bookshops. I'm going to literally try and supply it to addiction centres, rehab clinics all over the country. Just literally donate it. I want people to be able to read it. And it goes to, I think one of the biggest things in mental health is that we focus on how to look after the person with the mental problem, but we don't educate those around them well enough on how to support that person. And I think that, teachers, mentors in sport, parents, adult family members and peers, we need to become more aware that everybody's different. You can't treat everybody the same. You can't, and you need to, just 5 minutes of your time for someone can make the world of difference,
Yeah.
And that's what the book's there to do. So there you go.
So one of your big purposes there is, from yourself, is obviously to help other people through the book, through the sports business club, so that they've got better mental health.
Yeah, because if you're mentally strong, forget about, and I'm not saying forget about it, look, you get yourself physically strong, get yourself physically fit, 100%. The most important thing is to be mentally strong to start with. Love yourself. Every single person is worth something. Doesn't matter what you've been told by anybody in the past. You are worth something, and you've got an ability, and you've got a purpose, and just have some confidence in yourself. Just be who you want to be, but be good. And every day you do that, you build confidence, and just things can get better. So yes, mental health and everything else is the most important thing as far as I'm concerned.
Just going to take you back. You've launched the sports business club there. Do you have a background in sport which has inspired that?
No, I do and I don't. So, I was a football nut. I played football every single day of my life until the age of 21. I was never going to make it pro. So I'm not one of these people that sits there and says, I could have made it. 99% of people out there can't make it, but I wasn't good enough to even be considered. Let's be blunt, okay? But within youth football, I was in the London Youth FI leagues, and I used to play in the top division. I used to play for a club that used to win the league a lot. So don't get me wrong, I wasn't bad either. I was the school captain. I just wasn't that good. So sport has always been interesting to me, but as an adult, as soon as the drugs kicked in, I started to turn up late for matches, and then started to lose my place, and then just decided not to bother anymore. But like I say, when I got lonely, that time when I got lonely on the streets, I started to think back about everything, because what happens is once you clear your brain with all the thought processes of what you've got to do, I want to get drunk, I want to do this, I want to do that, like, I've got to lie to that person, I've got to lie to this person. Once all that goes, then all of a sudden, all the thoughts that come back into your mind from the past, because you never forget anything, and you start to reminisce. And the thing I can remember is that the happiest time of my childhood was on that park playing football. Yeah. And I thought to myself, do you know what? I'm going to do something for people's mental health, and I'm going to do it with sport. And that's how it all came.
That's brilliant. And what type of clubs are you looking to support with the sports business?
Yeah, sorry, you might hear a noise. My neighbour's put a drill on. Perfect time, isn't it?
I can't hear it, so okay.
Look, let's be blunt. The clubs that we're supporting, it's any sport, and it is any age. So we can take amateur, we can take semi-professional, professional. We're trying to keep out the main leagues for like football. So we're looking at the National League and down. So we're not looking at the Premiership, Championship, League One, League Two. But if the club needs help, we will help. We will get involved. And the idea is that sports clubs can come to us. There's two ways we support them. They can refer businesses into us, which we then convert into business club members that do networking for our business. And then we cut back 20% of all membership fees back to that club. So we fund the club through business referrals. And 5% of our turnover goes to charity, or little charity projects all over the UK. But the other way we support clubs is we actually have what's something called a club support pack, which is a collaboration of some amazing people. We've got some ex-pros, Team GB athletes, ex-referees from the Premier League. And then we've got your normal, real, good, lovely people that have got skills, that love sport. Yeah. And we've got a mixture of both. And we cover every type of service it takes to run a sports club, from the accountancy, HR, legal side of things, insurance, down to stadium management, food and beverages, pitch management, down to mental health education, coaching, and then physio, strength and conditioning, physical coaching and personal training on the pitch. And we're literally launching that in December, and any club can come to us, and we have a fund attached to it. So if a club's struggling to be able to pay those bills and support themselves in those ways, we've got people on hand ready to come in and help and assist, and maybe slightly cheaper than what they're currently paying, and maybe with a fund with it as well. So we want to help clubs with money, but we also want to help take the burden of the overheads away from clubs as well. So we're launching the club support pack next week. So we have the business networking that funds clubs and a support network around the clubs and the players that's being launched next week.
And obviously right now with COVID, there are quite a few sports clubs which are struggling, so they're going to have a huge benefit from this type of service. Yeah,
I'll tell you now, Gillingham Town Football Club based in Kent, since May, has probably had over £5,500 worth of funding. They're in the 6th tier. It costs about £8,000 a year to run their club. And all they've done, when I say all they've done, I mean, I'm part of Gillingham Town. So, yeah, I helped build it in the first place. But all we've done is spoke to local businesses around our club, create a network around them, and off they go. We had a beautiful referral from a wheelchair rugby team. They gave us a Trustpilot review the other day. We sent them enough money to pay for 10 weeks of their training facilities. So 10 weeks of their training facilities have been paid for by the Sports Business Club this month. That's a lot of people.
Yeah, that's amazing. You're touching so many lives. That's fantastic. We'll look to wrap things up in a few minutes. Would you be able just to share with the listeners 3 takeaway messages from this conversation?
Yeah, well, from this conversation in particular, look, some people are popular, some people aren't. Some people are accepted, some people aren't. Some people are confident about being different. Do you know what? Every single one of you is worth something. And if you're put in a position, don't get anxiety over the fact that you're not allowed to make mistakes. You're allowed to make mistakes. You are, okay? That's how you learn. But if you feel lonely or anxious, talk to people, yeah? Even if you can't turn to someone that's close to you, just find somebody that is not close to you that you know. Obviously, make sure it's someone you know and trust, or reach out, The minute you open your mouth and start talking about how you feel is the minute half your problems disappear. So I suppose that would be one of them. I think another one is to be kind. There's you don't know what someone's going through. I used to walk down the streets off my head on cocaine, looking at the person on the streets thinking, God, look at him, he's a drunk. Whilst I had cocaine in my nose, yeah? I mean, the irony is just unbelievable, Doesn't matter if someone's got more or less than you. What matters is how you treat them and how they treat you, yeah? And just giving someone 5 minutes of your time to change their life, or change their day at least. So no matter what, be nice to everybody, because if someone's not nice to you, you know how it feels. And I suppose the last thing is that one of the biggest problems I found with myself growing up is I never met my expectations. So I was brought up in a way that I had to be better than I was. That was an expectation put on me by certain members that were close to me. Do you know something? You're good enough as you are. As long as you know inside you've done your best. Don't give up. Do your best. But if you don't reach exactly where you want to be, but you know you've done the best, give yourself a break, because you did a good job and you can always come back. So don't put too much pressure on yourself. Do what you can. Do it to the best of your ability and be satisfied with that.
Very wise words. So we've got 3 things there, basically, is encouraging people to reach out and talk to other people. We've got, in effect, treat people like you'd want to be treated yourself. And then, never give up and simply do your best. I really like that. I appreciate your time, David, and I can see it has been quite difficult for you on occasions. You've done amazingly well. It's really inspiring what you're doing now with Sports Business Club and your journey as well.
David, it's been really nice talking to you. And you know what? I've started doing this in the last year, and it still gets you, because when you talk about it, you still feel the emotions that you felt at the time. But one person's life changes because of doing this, then it's my job done, Yeah. But thanks for giving me the opportunity to do it, David.
I'll certainly be sharing it in all the places I can do. whereabouts can the listeners actually find you if they want to reach out and have a conversation with you?
I'm on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn. It's David Jueno. Obviously, we've got the sportsbusinessclub.co.uk, www.thesportsbusinessclub.co.uk. There's a contact form on there. Even if you just want to reach out to talk to someone about a problem, yeah? Don't think you have to come to me as a business. Just literally send an email. Just ask for David, and I'll give you a call. Even if you've got a mental health problem, a drugs problem, or something you've never told anybody, just send a message. I can be contacted on Facebook, David Jueno, that's Jueno, and LinkedIn, exactly the same, David Jueno. Just literally find us, and if you need some help, then I will talk to you. Number one, I promise you, I will talk to you, and see what help we can find people.
That's great. I'll pop all of those details in the show notes so people can potentially reach out to you. And again, I really appreciate your time. Thanks very much.
Cheers, David. Take care.
A little reminder, if you have an interest in sports psychology and are looking to learn from other like-minded people in the field, head on over to the Facebook community, the Sports Psychology Hub, which is growing by the day, where we share best practice and support each other's development. Have a great week in the build-up to Christmas. I'd like to give a big thanks to today's sponsors, Functional Intelligent Training, who are a sports injury clinic located in Gosforth, near Newcastle upon Tyne, and specialise in athlete development, nurturing future champions, strength and conditioning support, and excellent rehabilitation services. Thank you for listening to Demystifying Mental Toughness today. To sign up for tips and advice to help you be the best that you can be, go to www.sport-excellence.co.uk and sign up to the Mental Edge newsletter.